Hi everyone, my name is Maitri and I'm very passionate about tabletops and am on a quest to become a better player, better GM, and a better person. And I want to share some of the cool stuff with you that I have learned. Today I want to talk to you about a central mechanic in the game, Swords Without Masters, and tell you how it's made me a better D&D and tabletop player and GM as well. Overall, the mechanic is called tones. I cannot recommend this game strong enough to get your narration and description skills to be stronger. Just like any tool, you're not going to use this for every single thing. But now when there's something you or your players are engaging with, you can help direct the energy level of the scene through your own word choice. Not everything has to be frantic and not everything has to be meticulous and precise, but there is an opportunity for variety. This is not a video about how to play the game, so if you're looking for like an instructional video on how Swords That Masters is played, this is not that video. I will link some resources in the description box for you to check out if you want. To give you a brief summary though, just some context. Swords That Masters, made by the same brain behind Dread, the horror Jenga game, Epidaya Ravikal. Oh, I might be saying his last name wrong. I'm so sorry if I am. Pushes the boundaries of what some folks would even consider a game, really. It's mostly just taking turns telling a story. There is very little dice rolling. And what little there is, it's not meant to resolve actions, but rather direct the way that the story is being told and the narration goes. So if heavily narrative playstyles are not your bag, and improv is not your bag, you really enjoy a more tactical, more strategic kind of play, this is not for you. Not to say that there isn't combat, because that's usually what people think when I say tactics and strategy. Like, that's not what I mean. There's usually a ton of combat. But the combat is very cinematic, and resolution is really much more about not whether your plans work, because your plan is going to work. And I think that's the central difficulty that most people have, is that there's no real failure condition. So your plan will work, but the resolution that you get from the dice roll is, do you defeat the bad guy with a flourish of sword and sorcery, or do you defeat him with a quiet dagger slipped into his side? So getting into a headspace of, everything you want to try will definitely succeed is kind of challenging for some players. And especially, actually, I found more veteran players, those with a lot of tabletop history, that concept is fundamentally opposite to basically every other game. So it doesn't matter how generous your GM is, there are things that are just not going to work, because of the physics of the world or whatever. Like if you walk off the edge of a cliff, in most games, you're going to plummet to your death. With Swords That Masters, you can sprout wings without there being a problem, or you could think with portals and open up one in front of you and one up top. The only thing the dice will tell you is the mood of the narration. So the wings you sprout, are they dark, sinewy, leathery, or are they kind of bright and radiant and angelic? The portal you open, is it a deep purple tear in reality, or is it a chaotic whirlpool of dimensions and colors? So that's what I mean when I say the dice don't dictate success or failure. They dictate how you approach telling the story, really. Specifically, you get either a glum mood or a jovial mood. The game describes glum as still, Moody, muted, quiet, introspective, understated, entangled, ensorcelled, sorrowful, lonely, melancholic, eerie, chilling, foreboding, beckoning, strange. The grey-green sky just before a storm, a starlit path, whispers from forgotten languages. The blade drawn swiftly across the throat, stifled laughing, gentle weeping, subtle enchantments, erudite conversation, the furtive glances of new lovers, a song sung in a minor key, a book enjoyed by candlelight, armies waiting in the rain. Jovial, on the other hand, is described as vibrant, cacophonous, hot, boastful, seized, spellbound, crowded, mirthful, terrifying, painful, clear, cheerful, welcoming, aggressive, familiar. Sun-drenched plains, a road heavily trafficked by trade caravans. Eldritch names screamed from a spire top. The sure heft of a swinging axe, mirthful wrestling, open sobbing, flagrant magics, carousing, a flirtatious laugh, a song sung in major key, the swell of the sea in the storm, the chaos of battlefield, oaths and forbidden curses, the arterial spray from a now headless foe. So I love this, not just because it fundamentally challenges how you view and what you consider success. Success is not being able to do a thing. Success is just about engaging with the scene, whatever the scene is. I have heard the game compared to sort of formal improv. I've never done formal improv, so I don't know. But the people who've described it this way to me have, so I'm inclined to believe them. To give you an example of a scene you would narrate in a glum tone versus a jovial tone based on the dice, let's use that example before. I'm gonna put a content warning here for violence and a little bit of gore. So the general scene is you enter the room with the bad guy who you've been hunting for weeks. You take him out by slitting him across the throat. If you roll Glum, you could narrate, I step into the room, finally having found this man I've been meticulously tracking after having slipped past his distracted guard. The room, somberly decorated in muted greens and deep purples, darkens with intensity as everything fades away around us. All that's left is him and me and this knife. I slither up behind him, using the shadows to hide my movement. With one swift, precise motion, I slit his throat. A trickle of blood in his widening eyes, a whispered no from his lips are the only indication that anything has happened. I slink away carefully before his body even slumps to the ground. If you roll jovial for the same scene, you could narrate, I shove past the guards entering the room, all of them letting me through after wisely deciding they aren't getting paid enough to die for their master. I enter the lavishly decorated room draped in fresh, lively greens and rich purples, and see this man I've been missing just by a few steps for the last month, always just behind him. I can't contain my rage, and I roar as I dive towards him. My knife finds purchase in his neck, and I rip forward, tearing his windpipe as I do. His eyes fly wide with shock as blood spurts from his neck, drenching me in his life force before he thuds unceremoniously to the floor. So those were two of the exact scene for all intents and purposes, but the mood you capture by envisioning it as dark and precise versus rageful and a little frantic is incredibly different. So that's the central mechanic of the game, is tones, and I just love it. I mentioned earlier that this directly impacted how well I GM for D&D and other games. To go back to that, the way it did this was that it taught me how to be intentional about how word choice can affect the mood of a scene. Like when you say it out loud, intellectually, it makes sense and probably even sounds a little basic. But if you think about your descriptions, they might be mostly neutral. A little intentionality behind word choice can really impact the mood. So instead of a barn that's falling apart, which is a neutral description, maybe a barn barely standing with rotted, decayed walls for a darker, quieter mood. Or a barn barely standing with dried, cracked, splintering walls for something a little bit more active. Doing this kind of mood setting through language is something that, we're all kind of intentional about anyway. This is just a little bit extra to make it a little better. As a player, even being intentional about the words I use to describe my character's actions fleshed out their characterization in a really nuanced and subtle way. Sure, you're cleaning your weapon, but are you doing it with a practiced meditative patience or with an aggressive, rough determination? Anyway, that's all I have. I'll link to the game in the description for you to check it if you want to. Thanks so much for watching. Come see you again soon. Bye.